Hey guys, it's Bro You Whack, and I know we've all had those competitive games where on the enemy team, maybe there was one DPS that was completely shredding through your team. They were rolling you, and maybe you didn't know what to do, because Overwatch is a game where you have to make switches to counter the enemy team. Or at least I would think that a lot of people know that, because even still to this day, people still don't do it. However, you're a good person, and you want to make the switch to stop the obvious problem, which is the enemy DPS shredding through your team. And that is the exact reason on why I'm making today's video, which is one counter for every damage hero, or DPS hero. Now, I do want to make this a three-part series where I would look at one counter for every DPS hero, one counter for every tank hero, and one counter for every healer. Now, while DPS is more or less the hero that you're looking to counter, there are a bunch of other heroes that you might not know of the counters, or maybe in the future, one hero will be the complete meta hero that you won't know how to stop. Well, then you'll have a reference video with my ideal hero, that one hero. Now, the reason why I didn't want to list 3 or 4 heroes for every single hero is because that can get very overwhelming. If I give you just one hero, one hard-hitting hero to counter the enemy DPS hero, then when you're in the heat of the moment, when you're about to lose or the enemy team is just shredding you, you're going to have that one go-to hero that, whether you're good with that hero or not, you're going to be able to ideally win the fight because you're on the field. You might not be good with a Winston or a Diva, but since you're on the field, well, you're going to beat them because of how both of the heroes are built. So that's the reason why I limited to just one hero. But one thing I gotta say before we start with the list is that when you're picking a counter, yes, your main job is to initially kill the hero, but you also gotta think about ways that you can make them less effective. If the enemy team is not being effective with their abilities or their primary form of fire, and not necessarily dying, they're gonna realize, wow, I'm not effective, I'm gonna switch to something else. Again, that's what smart Overwatch players would do. Even though they're not dying, they're not effective, so if you're able to make them switch, well, that's a good counter in my book. So now that we got it out of the way, now let's continue with the list. So the first DPS hero we're going to be looking to stop is going to be Ashe, and the counter for Ashe that I chose is going to be Diva. And just a warning, Diva is going to be a lot of heroes' counters, but at least with Ashe, she heavily relies on her primary form of fire, and also her TNT, which Defense Matrix can stop both of those things. So she can not only eat the TNT, but also dive the Ashe while eating a lot of her primary form of fire. And she doesn't, okay, she does have a little bit of escape with her coach gun, but if you're able to time out when she uses their coach gun and find out when to dive in, well, she's not going to have a way to get out, and she has no way of stopping you because you're diving in with Defense Matrix. Next hero we're going to be looking to counter is going to be Bastion. Now, Bastion is an interesting character because most oftentimes he's going to be ran with a pirate ship comp, with an Orisa or with a Reinhardt, whatever the case may be. So that's what I'm really considering, because if they're not running anything to protect the Bastion, really a lot of things can be considered, but you're looking to counter the pirate ship comp, not really Bastion, if that makes sense. But the hero that I chose is going to be Junkrat. So there's many different reasons. Assuming that they're running the pirate ship comp, you as Junkrat can burn the Reinhardt shield, can burn the Orisa shield so that you can stop the protection. But also with all those grenades, you're going to have a concentrated DPS towards the Bastion that he's not going to be able to stay in sentry mode, or at least continue to heal, because you have so much DPS coming to you. Plus, on top of that, you're going to have your tire that can build up fairly quickly, so that if they are running the pirate ship comp, or even if they're just running Bastion that is shredding you, you're going to be able to go in with your tire and just explode it on the Bastion. Assuming that he's hiding in a corner, you gotta go be a little bit of a sneaky snake to explode it on him. Doomfist is such an annoying hero, or at least before the buffs. After the buffs, it is so easy to counter him, and what I chose for Doomfist's counter is going to be McCree, especially with the recent buff. It is so simple. Once you see a Doomfist dive in, whether it's on yourself or on your squishies, you just gotta flash him, fan the hammer, and you kill him because of that 40 to 50 increase to his secondary fire, his fan the hammer ability. Beforehand, there really wasn't a lot of counters to Doomfist, which made him annoying. Alright, here's Genji's counter. Are you ready? Are you ready? Winston. I think we all knew that. I don't need to explain it. It's a pretty obvious one. He can't deflect your electricity, you can dive him, you can chase him, and also you can protect your team with your bubble, which he can't shred through so easily. Next up is Hanzo. Now, at least for me, when I see a Hanzo that is shredding on the enemy team, my first thought isn't to go to to Winston, but rather to D.Va. I see a lot of people choose Winston, which is a fine counter, but the thing with Hanzo is that he can shred the bubble and also shred Winston himself. Even though Winston is probably going to be diving the Hanzo, he just has to do his storm arrow and kill you. But at least with D.Va, D.Va is an excellent counter to not only eat all those storm arrows coming, but to also dive the Hanzo, use your rockets and your bullets, and put pressure on the Hanzo. So that's why I chose D.Va rather than Winston. Now for Junkrat's counter, I'm gonna go with 2 counters. This is the only time I'll list 2 counters, all because there's 2 routes. Either make him less effective and make you more effective, or just simply kill him. You just simply want to kill him without having a fear of him killing you. So if you want to go the latter route, just simply kill him without dying, go with Pharah. All because his grenades won't touch you, but you can rain havoc on him. Now, a lot of people will say Zarya is a counter, which is a good idea. However, you can still die from the enemy Junkrat if you're Zarya. If you're being aggressive while bubbling yourself with the enemy Junkrat grenades, it just takes a few extra grenades to break that bubble and to simply kill you. So that's why, like, I'm more leaning on the Pharah counter, but you can still use Zarya because, well, that makes you more effective if there's an enemy Junkrat. You just have to be a little bit careful. For McCree's counter, this one was a tricky one because he's such a unique hero. He can win up-close battles and long-range battles. So I chose Orisa as his counter to make him less effective. You can still die when you're playing Orisa, but at least when you're playing Orisa, you won't get flashed, assuming that you save your fortify for his flash. You can easily pull him if he's on high ground, or pull him if he's trying to run away, and you can also protect your team from his high constant DPS with your shield. This is a scenario where you're making him less effective. Mei's counters. So you don't think of a counter for Mei because most oftentimes not, you don't think of a good Mei on your team. But from my experience, okay, this is me personally, I see Winston to be a great counter for Mei. I hate it every single time they have an enemy Winston because Winston won't get frozen because of his jump ability, and by the time you're about to freeze him, he just jumps right out. And also his bubble is a 360 bubble that makes sure I'm not able to freeze him or anybody else on the team. Again, this is just from my experience. Zarya could be considered one, but oh my god, Winston, he's so annoying. Pharah's counter, pretty obvious here, but I went with McCree. But if you don't want such an obvious counter that is still just as effective, just in a different way, you can also go with Sombra to, 1, bring her out of the sky, assume that you can hack the Pharah, and also she's a little bit of a hit scan, so if you need that constant, hit scanny fire, you can go with Sombra, but obviously you can use a Soldier, McCree, an Ashe, or heck, even a D.Va or a Zenyatta. There's a lot of answers for Pharah herself, but for Pharmacy, McCree or Sombra is the way to go. So for Reaper's counter, this is another interesting one because, again, you don't see a lot of god tier Reapers, but when you do, it is pretty tough to think of that initial hardcore counter. So I chose Zarya to be Reaper's counter, all because when there is an enemy Reaper, he pretty much thinks he has free range to shoot whoever he wants with no consequences. But when there is a Zarya, he has to think twice about who he's going to shoot. He has to think about, okay, does Zarya have her bubble? Does she have her team bubble? Whatever the case may be. So at least when a Zarya and Reaper are fighting together, well, you should be able to get that initial charge, tricking him into thinking he can just simply shoot you and then bubble yourself and then get that big initial charge to burn him down. Yes, you might still die from the Reaper if you still continue the fight, but on top of that, another thing you have to also consider is that Reaper is going to be going after maybe another DPS, maybe your team Winston, maybe your squishies, whatever the case may be. So your team bubble is going to be able to give that added protection for obvious protection, but also more charge for you. Now for Soldier's counter, this is another case where you don't see a lot of amazing soldiers because most oftentimes than not, amazing soldiers are better McCrees. But if a soldier is running through you, you can run another D.Va because, well, you can eat the bullets. Once he gets his tac visor, you can easily dive the Soldier 76 with Defense Matrix and also protect your team. Now you will probably get popped out of your mech if you are D.Va, but that is way better than having your whole entire team get shredded by tac visor. Now for Sombra's counter, this is another interesting case because she's so elusive to the point where there's not a lot of things that you can instantly stop her, but I went with McCree because assuming that Sombra's going to be hacking your secondary healers like a Lucio or Zenyatta, you can easily stun her, fan the hammer, and kill her. Now if you're the one getting hacked by Sombra while playing McCree, luckily you shouldn't rely on your stun and fan the hammer. You should be able just to pop shot her a couple times and kill her. Now I know it's kind of ironic because I've been saying throughout this whole entire video, stun and fan the hammer, even with this counter, but if you're good with McCree, you know, you should be able to kill the Sombra without needing your abilities. Now for Symmetra's counter, I assume that this is going to be a god like Symmetra that's going to be able to charge her beam on shields and whatnot. So a lot of the times people think that Winston would be a good counter, which isn't bad, but I chose Roadhog to be the initial hardcore counter because he can delete the turrets. He won't feed the enemy Symmetra charge because that's how she's able to build her charge is on shields, and he should be able to get an insta-kill on her, assuming that she doesn't have her teleporter to be elusive. Again, Winston isn't that bad of a counter, but assuming that she's good, she's going to be smart, charge on the bubble that you lay on with Winston, and just shred through everyone. Where Roadhog, yes, he might have a fat belly, but he can at least take care of the Symmetra before she can charge up her beam. Torbjorn, another hero where if they have it on the enemy team, it is so annoying to try to take care of because you don't think of that hardcore counter that can take care of him. But here, I went with McCree. I know, such a cop-out, but at least with McCree, you can easily take out the turret, and you can also win the up-close fights with Torbjorn, where a lot of people forget Torbjorn has a shotgun where he can just delete through so many people, where with McCree, if he can last through that initial burst from Torbjorn, he can easily, guess what? Flash, fan, delete him. So Tracer's counter is going to take us all the way back to Season 12 and list Brigitte as her main counter. Yes, McCree can be an obvious counter here, but a good Tracer is not going to go and challenge the enemy McCree. A good Tracer is going to go and challenge the secondary healers, say a Zenyatta, say a Lucio, say an Ana, even though she's not a secondary healer. So a way to make her less effective is by playing Brigitte, because not only can you stop her, not kill her necessarily, but make her less effective is by not dying. Okay, that's your main job when switching to Brigitte, is that you're not going to get one-clipped by her because she knows, well, who am I going to go after? And once she recognizes that, she's not going to go challenge the McCree, the Brigitte, or say the Moira, she's going to switch off. Now for Widowmaker's counter, it's kind of an obvious one. I went with Winston. Now, yes, you can go with Diva, but one, I've been overdoing it with the Diva counters, and two, Winston can outlive the Widowmaker, assuming that he knows how to navigate the map, assuming that he knows when to dive in, and that's basically your job when you're playing Winston, is to put constant pressure on Widowmaker. Yes, you might not initially kill her, but if you're putting pressure and putting her in situations that she's not comfortable in, then you did your job. And also your bubble can kind of put a little bit of protection with your team, assuming that you're putting the bubble around where the Widowmaker is, or maybe around your team. And that is one counter for every DPS hero. Yes, there were some obvious counters in here, but hopefully I enlightened you and just kind of reminded you also of some obvious counters that you can easily switch to. Now, yes, a lot of them were like Diva and McCree and whatnot, but it's because those two heroes are great, and maybe those are some heroes that you want to try to learn, so that if there is a good Pharah, or if there is a good Ashe, a Hanzo, well, because you're good with the Diva or McCree, whatever other counter I listed, well, you're going to be able to pull that out, make them less effective, stop them, and win the game. So anyway, guys, I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching. I don't know when I'll be releasing the one counter for every tank video, maybe next week or maybe next month. This isn't going to be a long, dragged out series because it's literally just 3 videos, but hopefully if this video goes well, I'll be more motivated to do it as early as possible. If people don't really like it, well, I still want to complete the series. So I love you guys. Thank you guys for watching. More Overwatch videos to come, and bye.